Welcome to NLP Talks with Laura Evans, a podcast for people looking to unleash their potential in business and life. I'm Laura Evans, international trainer of NLP and host for this podcast series. Join me for insightful interviews with people that know firsthand just how NLP can change lives, and they'll share with you tips and strategies to help you clear your path to success. Stay tuned. Hey there, I'm Laura Evans, and welcome to this episode of NLP Talks. I'm the lead NLP trainer at our company, Unleash Your Potential, and today it gives me great pleasure to welcome you to the episode featuring Julian Davis. In this episode, Julian is going to be sharing with you how he's been using NLP to help people within a section of the armed forces, particularly around presentations and PTSD. And then in the episode, we're going to go on to talk about 3 different programs that he created for young people: Mammoth Hunting, Team Tiger, and Feed the Right Wolf. If you're a parent, someone interested in supporting young people, or indeed a young person yourself, you are going to love this episode. Let's cut straight across to Julian as he starts to share with you how he got into NLP and just what a skeptic he was in the beginning.
I was a bit skeptical about it, looked into it, read into it, and never take anything on face value. And I thought, okay, there's more to it than this mumbo jumbo. But the biggest thing for me was having the opportunity to actually have it tried out on me. And in reality, if it works on me, it will work for anybody, because I always approach things with that suspicious kind of attitude, if you like. So yeah, definitely blown away by it. For me, it's got very, very real value. And I'm in an advantageous place now where I know it works for myself and I've seen it work for others. And it's my go-to technique for so many different things in life, in work, in all sorts of areas now. Yeah.
I know, it's phenomenal. And to be quite honest, I was a little bit the same when I first came across it. You know, you kind of like, what is it? Like exactly. And it's one of the reasons why I spent so long in previous podcast episodes talking about what it is and the results it gets people. Now, I distinctly remember on your practitioner course, this is going back some time now, that obviously on the course, I asked for a willing volunteer from the audience to come up the front and I do a demonstration on everybody, because I think it's really important that I show everybody how this works. And I remember you came up the front, and if I remember rightly, it was a swish pattern that we did. And those of you listening to the podcast, if you don't know what a swish pattern is, go back to series 2 and find the episode called What is a Swish Pattern, and you'll hear from Julian because he's actually in the episode. But for those that haven't heard it, could you just take yourself back to what was going on in your professional life at that time? Because I know there was a specific event coming up at work, and we worked on it, didn't we, in a matter of 12 or so minutes. So tell everybody what happened when we did the technique, and then tell everybody, most importantly, what happened when you went to that meeting.
I know. It's absolutely amazing.
Brilliant.
And again, it's one of the things that's really brought home to me the value of NLP. All right, I was actually on a project team at the time, trying to deliver some fairly complicated kind of IT solutions for a couple of projects. And everything was running behind, as things tend to do with IT. So I was getting more and more frustrated with the deadlines being missed, everything slipping, all the rest of it. So I was getting really, really wound up, really, really angry with the situation. And obviously the pressure was on me to deliver. So I was getting quite anxious about it as well. Now, I was lucky enough to be on my course the week before. I had a very big meeting on the Monday with the ICT team, their leadership, and all the rest of it. And to be honest with you, it was going to be a kind of a make or break conversation. I was on the edge of really blowing my stack. So we said, right, okay, let's do the swish pattern to kind of combat this anger and frustration. So we did. And I have to say, it didn't really feel much different after the swish pattern. I couldn't access the emotion as strongly as I had, but it was a case of, slightly different, but I'm still going to strangle them on Monday. Well, I didn't worry about the meeting all weekend before the actual meeting, which I knew was different. normally I'd have been het up all weekend. I wouldn't have enjoyed my weekend. And it would have been a case of I was building up to it. But when I actually walked into the meeting, it's as if everything just clicked into place. We sat down and there was no anger. There was no frustration. I actually had to fake being annoyed. I had to fake kind of being angry with them to get things done, which was actually fantastic because all I felt inside was amusement. So I had to pretend to be angry.
I love it. It's brilliant. I love the fact that you had to fake being angry because you didn't feel it anymore.
But the thing for me was, I hadn't suffered the anxiety beforehand. I wasn't walking out of there all kind of built up and angry. My blood pressure didn't hit the roof because of it and all the rest of it. And immediately after, I could have a chuckle at how I had to fake being angry with them. And I've used that technique so many times now, even when I've been in quite intense meetings. It's like, no, just leave it float, leave the anger float. And it's worked. It's really, really, really worked. And again, this is the true skeptic speaking. And worked really, really well for me. Couldn't believe it.
I couldn't believe it when you caught me on it was like we were talking at a completely different point after that meeting, because I think it was I'm going to guess probably a couple of months. I can't exactly remember, but it was some time after, and I remember you coming up to me and saying to me, "Do you remember that meeting?" Well, it went brilliantly, and I had to fake being angry, and I was like, "Julian, hold on, faking being angry? What's that all about?" And he's like, "Well, I had to because I didn't feel it, and it was how I needed to get stuff done. I needed to get my point across." And it was the way they understood, it was the way that was expected. And, and it was how how that population were used to being told, this is not acceptable. You need to up your game. Yeah. And it's just fascinating. And I'll never forget your face. It was just brilliant. I was like, what's happened?
I know.
But it's so much nicer though, isn't it? When we talk a lot, don't we, in NLP about patterns running and how humans are habitual and we run patterns all the time. But that pattern used to run for you, and actually then you took it away and you weren't nervous over the weekend because the pattern wasn't running in the same way. And all of a sudden you had what we call in NLP more neurological choices. Essentially means you could choose how you felt. And you got the result, but actually without the anxiety and without the anger that maybe you would have had previously, which is just phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
It's so much easier for me, so much a better experience. And that my stress levels around that just went through the floor. It was like, fine. I could worry about other things there.
More important things maybe. But it's funny, isn't it? I know when people come on our practitioner course and they come with a specific goal in mind, like they come to either because they want to help people or there's some big things, and it's just sometimes those little things where you would never have booked a practitioner course to help you with that meeting. That wouldn't have made any sense, but actually it's all those extra things that make a difference for people in their life in general, regardless of why they might have booked in the first place.
Definitely.
Yeah, cool. I'd like to move on if I can, because I know we could talk all day about each of these topics that we're going to talk about today. But I'd like to move on because I know some of our listeners will be fascinated to hear how you've been using NLP with the armed forces. There's a lot of press around things like PTSD and people, maybe not opening up and people bottling things up. And I think that's been well documented in the popular press and certainly on things that, we've all probably seen on social media. And I think it's just wonderful to think that there was an opportunity which you took to actually get involved and really start to help people. And I'd love you to tell all the listeners about how that journey started, how you got involved, and some of the things that you've done initially and then subsequently, because it's really snowballed, hasn't it, in terms of what you've been able to do and how you've been able to help people. It's just such an exciting story. So can I get you, I know it's going back quite a while for you now, but can I get you to start at the very beginning in terms of how did this opportunity present itself in the first place for you? And I'm guessing you never called it NLP when you first went in to help.
No.
So tell everybody, how did it first happen?
Basically, a friend of mine who is a sergeant in the armed forces, he was going on a training course the week after I met up with him. and he would have been required to deliver some training, make some presentations, and basically stuff like that. Now, in the past, he's never had any issues about making presentations, standing up in front of the crowd, and just getting on with it. But he found that after serving in Afghanistan a couple of tours, a lot of his confidence had gone. And the thought of just standing up and making that presentation really, really filled him with dread, to the extent that he said, look, just thinking about it is making me feel sick. I don't know how I'm going to do it. It's really, really winding me up. So I thought, well, hold on. Look, I've been making presentations and stuff for years and years and years. So we can sit down and go through the mechanics of it, and that'll give you a bit more confidence. And then he said, well, look, I know how to make presentations. I know that I need to just kind of structure it properly, practice it and stuff. And I said, well, yeah, that's basically what you need to do. And then I thought to myself, right, I've got some things in my toolbox now, which I had recently learned through NLP, which I said, right, I'm going to try some techniques on you and see if they help. Now, my friend was more of a skeptic on as much as a skeptic.
I was going to say, what was the reaction to that? I could imagine.
When I just said, I've got some kind of tricks and techniques I can use, it was kind of, yeah, okay. Well, I said, well, look, I know they work, so let's give it a try. I didn't package it at all as NLP, because I think that would have been a kind of, oh no, I'm not going to try any of that stuff and things. So I said, right, okay. We spent we ended up spending most of the day together, way into the evening. And we went through a number of different techniques, swish pattern being one of them. We done some time therapy. We done a couple of things as well, just to get him over some of the anxiety he was feeling about the presentation in particular, but a few other things as well. So he said, oh yeah, fine. Yeah, we'll try it. And done a bit of this, done a bit of that. And I said, right, okay, well, good luck next week and let me know how you get on. Well, on the Friday, I get a phone call basically saying, what the hell have you done to me? I breezed the week. I wasn't anxious. I didn't get worked up. I just got up just like I used to be able to and just got on with it. I've even been commended for how relaxed I appeared when I was delivering some really complex lectures and stuff like that. So I thought, ooh, that's good.
Amazing.
I know. And again, because of how skeptical he was about it, I had it in the back of my mind, well, actually, is this going to work for him? And again, as far as I was concerned, that was great for me, because if I can get it to work on that friend, again, it'll work for practically anybody. Well, the offshoot of it was then that my mate kind of passed me on to everybody else that was having problems with their presentation skills and all the rest of it. So I landed up going down and basically going through the same sort of stuff with a group of about 6 people. This time I badged it up as NLP to explain to them what the science, if you like, behind it was and what we were doing, and framed things properly for everyone to get better results, which worked. One of the guys that was there came up to speak to me afterwards, because I'd mentioned how NLP can be used for things like PTSD. And he explained to me then that having come back from Afghanistan, there was an incident that he was involved with where vehicles struck an IED and all sorts of horrible things happened. But it had left him with post-traumatic stress disorder, which was generally triggered by the hissing sound of air brakes on a lorry or a bus. And he said it got to the point where if he was walking down the street and he heard a lorry's brakes, or if he couldn't walk across like a yard on his base where there would be lorries parked with things hissing away with their brakes, because it kind of triggered his PTSD and his flashbacks and things. So I thought, oh, right, okay, am I the right person to do this? But I said, look, this does work for people. Let's give it a try and see what happens. So in all fairness to the guy, he was amenable to it. And yeah, lo and behold, it actually worked. I was a bit surprised in some ways, but not in others, because I had confidence in the technique by then. But it's the first time I'd actually seen something, an NLP technique, actually work on something so profound. And the difference it made to him, because we were, almost instantaneously, that trigger of the air brake sound had gone.
Really? Was he able to test it?
Yeah. And he was saying that it's kind of, I can walk across the yard now, and it doesn't care what's parked up there, revving away and hissing their air brakes and stuff. doesn't trigger him at all. And likewise, out on the street, he's walking down a street in the town and the lorry's kind of going through, doesn't affect him at all.
Amazing.
And it has actually reduced the number of flashbacks he gets anyway, and has gone a long way to assisting with his PTSD.
Wow.
And, I'm still in touch with him now, and he's still saying, this is fantastic and all the rest.
And how long ago was this now when you did that?
Oh, gosh. Now you're asking. It's probably
a year ago, I would say.
Yeah, it's at least a year now.
Yeah.
I would say probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming up to like a year and a half now. And he's still going strong, still works for him. And it's what we did is firmly embedded now, and he doesn't suffer as much as he used to. And
that's phenomenal.
And that's led on to kind of other people getting in touch. And because I'm not actually part of the formal military system, if you like, they haven't got the stigma in kind of contacting me because it's not on their record, it's content free. So they're not having to sit there and relive all the horrible things that they've been through, unless they feel that they want to tell the story, in which case I listen. Because it's so content free, it's not kind of going over old wounds and things to be able to get the result. So I'm well impressed and well pleased with the results I've had with that.
I just thought, that's just phenomenal. To think that you could take this gentleman who, couldn't even walk past, a lorry with the air brakes going off without getting those flashbacks, I can't even begin to understand the emotion that he must feel in those moments, or used to feel in those moments. And, and to think that, you were able to make such a difference to his quality of life. And, because I know, that, from all the people that I've helped, people put in very elaborate strategies to avoid the thing that they're most scared of. And I remember working with a woman once that was completely terrified of bridges. And she would, you and I live in Wales, there's a lot of bridges in Wales, and to actually go from A to B having to avoid a bridge because it's across the valley, like that added half an hour to her journey. But to her, that was very, what she would call normal, because she would that's just how I cope. I'm sure, that he had developed some coping mechanisms of some, description to help him live his life. But actually to hear that that's not needed because the original problem has been dealt, which is that hiss of a brake, so that he can, live a more relaxed life, and I appreciate that, PTSD can be really complex. And again, I can't even imagine what he would have seen in Afghanistan. Yeah. But, it's just, it just must have been an amazing day for you when you heard that you'd made that difference to him.
Definitely. And again, his coping strategy was just total avoidance. In that he wouldn't walk down the high street in the local town if he knew there was going to be traffic there. He would walk totally around the yard on his base to avoid being exposed to the lorries and all the rest of it. So like that avoidance was impacting his kind of quality of life in a way. But to be able to help someone actually overcome that and become free of that, it was a very humbling experience.
Yeah, I can imagine. Oh my God, there's so much I want to ask about that story, about like where you started. And as you were talking, I didn't want to interrupt you because I was like, I just wanted you to tell everybody the story because, of course, I've heard it before and I just know how amazing it was. Just to go back to the beginning, what I absolutely loved about when you first got involved with this group of people, was the fact that actually you started off working on something that is what we would call maybe more of a safe problem. And we know that, don't we? When we coach people will come to us and will say, oh, can you help me with my presentation skills, or equivalent fairly safe problems to test out, whether this is a safe space for them to really make that difference. And I will say to people, NLP is just a label. You can call the skill set that we've got whatever you want to, because at the end of the day, what matters is that you make a difference. What matters is the result that you get people. And you clearly did. And then other people are looking at him going, whatever he said, I want some of that. I don't care what it is, but like, I've got to do presentations as well. And it's just phenomenal.
One of the big things I found and was really, really important was to listen between the lines. Because, you may be helping someone with what they feel is their main or initial kind of safe problem. But if you carefully listen between the lines, other issues will actually come forward.
Yeah. And that's a great pair of advice for anybody listening to this as NLP trained, looking to, because our NLP Talks audience is kind of split between people curious about NLP and NLP practitioners and master practitioners using these case studies from people like yourself to develop their skills. That's a really, really, really good point. Also, I think one of the big things that I remember you mentioned it today, and you mentioned it before, was the fact it's content free and it doesn't go on their record. Yeah. And I know that was really important to them, wasn't it? When you were, because I remember you and I had the conversation about, how do we help more of these people in the armed forces, and how is it that they're not getting the help that even does exist within the, if we call it the system, what is offered to them as a matter of course, but people tend not to take people up on that. And I was fascinated when you were telling me about the fact that they'd relayed to you the fact that they don't seek help because it goes on their file and they don't want that to follow them around for their professional career. And I just think that's so sad that people can't get the help they need because that's what they're scared of.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And again, it doesn't matter how we try to tackle the issue, there is that stigma attached to not being able to cope, not being good enough. Even asking for help is kind of seen as a weakness. And we're talking about guys here who don't want to show any weakness. But for them then to be able to access some form of support, which is effective, which works, without them having to really expose any weaknesses or to discuss what's going on in their head, is just an acceptance of they need some help with this and overcoming that stigma. And of course, because of the way NLP works, there's no need for it to be on formal medical records. It's a kind of a self-help situation where they can identify that they need something, and then they can approach someone who's got a few tools in the toolkit to actually throw at the issue and see how effective those become. Yeah. And a lot of it is having the confidence to actually explain to someone these work. And when, again, when you've got someone like me who's so skeptical about it beforehand, I'm being totally genuine about that. I think, this is never going to work on me. But it does.
Yeah. And I always say to people in the training room, when people become NLP practitioners, you are your best advert, because if you can congruently and genuinely share with people what it's done for you, then people respect that, and people, will warm to that. I'm a massive fan. You shouldn't be doing anything to anybody else that you haven't experienced yourself. I would never do that to someone, not being, that they're looking at you as someone that, is like them, a proper man, and can relate to some of their experiences. Yeah. And I think the fact that you could relate to their experiences and also say, listen, mate, you don't have to tell me all the detail. I just need to know what the problem is, and then we'll find a way of dealing with it. And I can imagine when you consider other therapies that perhaps were on offer to them, such as counselling, for example, which, as we know, is a completely content-driven process. You have to go through the detail, you have to recount the events, you have to go through what you did with the right intent to find a solution. But I'm not being funny, with my life experiences, and I've not had any of those kind of experiences, I wouldn't want to traipse back through all of that detail. So I can understand why people avoid getting help, because if they think that's the only option, and then you come in and go, well, do you know what? PTSD, I really think I can help, and you don't need to tell me what happened. We're just going to run this content-free process. Exactly. I'm assuming that you would have, let's not assume, Laura, let's ask the question. Which techniques did you use to help him with his PTSD?
I used timeline therapy. I use push pattern. There's a couple of other things that we, could have used there. But timeline therapy was a very, very important factor on it. And again, because it's content-free, and in those situations, people get anger with regard to the issue. They get guilt because they survived the situation. They get fear. They get all sorts of the main kind of negative emotions. And using something then like timeline therapy can actually go a long way, if not all the way, in freeing them from some of those negative associations and negative emotions. And again, using swish pattern, for example, to give them an alternative route, if you like, for their feelings when they come into that situation. So it worked out really, really well around things like that.
Did you use the fast phobia out of interest?
I didn't in that situation. I have with others.
Yeah.
But I found that the kind of the swish avoidance and the TLT had actually brought out the issue. So I didn't really need to go along that.
No. And that's the other thing as well, right, which I love about this technique, is because there are so many things in the toolkit that we've got, you pick what you think is right for that client based on the way that problem, they experience that problem, which is phenomenal. There is no right or wrong. What there is, as we know, is getting the client the right result. And if the result was that he can walk through a yard and the hissing doesn't bring all those flashbacks, then I say to people, I don't really care what technique I use as long as the client gets the result.
Exactly. And from that perspective, it was really good.
Yeah, I love it. And I just love the way that, you went in to help one guy with presentation skills. And because you did such a great job, other people start seeking you out and saying, oh, can I have some of that? Can you help me? And then someone feels comfortable enough with you to open up to say, I know you're here for presentation skills, but could you help me with this as well? And that's like when the magic starts to happen then, isn't it? When you really start, I'm not dissing presentations. it's a big deal for a lot of people, but to be able to really help someone at that level, just, I don't know, I know you said you felt humbled, but I'm guessing you got a lot out of that.
To actually sit back and think, I helped that guy, and his quality of life is improved. That means a lot. That means a hell of a lot. And from my perspective, that one kind of success was worthy of all the investment of time I've made. Just to be able to help that one guy. And, as a result of that, I've had quite a few people now. That was the catalyst for me in being able to see how much of a difference NLP can actually make for someone.
Yeah. And no disrespect to anybody listening to this in the armed forces, but this is not the kind of stuff they're used to,
no.
and the fact that you made it work, you've got them. I just think it's phenomenal. I'd love to sit here all day and find out about all of the armed forces stories that you've got, but there's other things I want to ask you about. So thank you so much for sharing that story, though, because I really hope that if anybody listening to this podcast is suffering with PTSD or is in the armed forces and is looking for perhaps a different way of being able to help, looking for somebody independent, then I'd thoroughly recommend they check you out. We'll cover all of Julian's contact details at the end of the show. So if anybody does want to get in contact with him, you'll know exactly how to do that. Right, so moving on to the next topic, which I'm equally as excited to get you to talk about, is I know that in a completely different segment of your business, you've also focused on helping young people.
Yeah.
Whilst I don't work with anybody under the age of 18, I have so much respect for people like yourself who have got the inclination and the passion and the desire to want to help our younger generations as they're coming through. And I'm not being funny, in the world of COVID, the more people of all ages that are able to access help, the better. Now, I'm in awe at how you took the NLP Practitioner Toolkit and created a program for young people, particularly focused around confidence and exams. And I remember you telling me about this, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's just amazing how you've taken a toolkit I've given you and repackaged it up in such a way that young people get it. Young people got great results. The stories I know you're going to go on to tell us about confidence and exam results being improved, like real tangible results for young people that are going to impact the rest of their lives. I just think it's such a gift to be able, to help these people. So I know you created a program called Team Tiger, and I'd love you to share with our NLP Talks podcast community how that came about and some of the results that you got those young people, because folks, you're going to love this story. It's amazing. So Julian, over to you. How did it all start?
Right. Start at the very beginning, as they say.
It's a very good place to start.
I've been working with children and young people since I was about 18, 19 myself. I've helped out with Cubs and Scouts. I've helped with the Red Cross youth as was. And I've also done a lot of work with the Air Training Corps, the RAF cadets. And over the years, I've had a number of young people with things like interview skills, confidence towards that, just some general what I tend to call life hacks because of time constraints and all the rest of it. When my daughter came along, So 15 years ago, I gave up most of the activities I had helping young people. But I still used to get kind of requests, if you like, from friends and, members of the family and stuff along the lines of, look, young Jackie's going for an interview in a couple of weeks' time. Can you sit down with him and go through the main points and stuff like that? So, yeah, happy to oblige. And that's what I used to do. Then, not the January that's just been, the January before that, my brother came to me, really concerned about my nephew and the fact that he couldn't revise, wouldn't revise, didn't know how to revise, and had no intention of doing any revision for his GCSE exams as was.
Oh dear.
So, yes. So my brother was kind of on the edge, at the end of his fuse, and it was a case of, other than grounding him, taking all his devices away from him, and locking him in a dark room with his books, he didn't know what else to try. And I said, well, look, I've been doing some work around NLP, and I've been doing some work around how people learn and looking into the kind of the neuroscience behind how we as humans actually learned to learn when in our evolution. So I sat down with my nephew and said, look, shall we try and approach this from a different way? And are you open to some suggestions in how to get you revising? And his basic answer was, yeah, as long as it gets mum and dad off my back and I can do something, fine.
Brilliant. I love it. What a response.
Yeah. and that's it. And so that's what we did. And they said, well, look, I've got a friend of mine who is in the same boat as me. Can he come along as well? And I said, yeah, no problem. So by the time we came around to our first kind of formal session on it, if you like, I ended up with 6 teenagers, 4 of whom wouldn't, couldn't, shouldn't ever revise, didn't know how to. The other 2 weren't too bad, but needed kind of a bit of a push. So what I'd actually devised for them was mammoth hunting. Now, I put together a little kind of a presentation, if you like, nothing too heavy because obviously they'd switch off, along the lines of how did we, our ancestors, learn things like hunt. And the example I used then was mammoth hunting. And it's like, about having activity before you sit down and read, having a group activity. So actually kind of revise together rather than just lock yourself in a dark room, which is totally alien to the way we need to learn. And also kind of looking at confidence, because one of the lads related to the fact that his maths teacher basically told him, look, I'm not going to help you revise. You're a waste of space. You're not going to achieve anything. I'm concentrating on the kids I want to be here.
Oh, my goodness.
And that, he related to me word for word what his teacher had actually said to him. And it drove me nuts. I was bouncing. I was absolutely bouncing that anybody who calls themselves like a professional teacher could turn around and say that to a young man.
Oh my! I hear that, and like my alarm bells in my head go, oh my God, you've just installed a limiting belief in that poor lad's mind. He's not capable and that he can't do it. And why should he even attempt? And the whole emotional roller coaster. I was just, oh wow.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, the anger and frustration I expressed when he told me that, and I won't use the exact language I used, but it was.
Please don't, because I'll have to bleep it out.
I know, it wasn't powerful, but the passion he saw in me, believing in the fact that if he tried, he could, was a big thing in actually helping him overcome that self-limiting belief. As in, well, my teacher says I've got any hope of this, but Julian believes in me, so let's give it a try. So yeah, I basically turned 6 stroppy teenagers from a bunch of people who wouldn't revise, couldn't revise, to a gang of 6 who met up every night of the week for a 2-hour revision session. They were even doing it on the weekends, even though I told them, look, you can have the weekends off as long as you fulfill your obligations to each other, to support each other. And the long or the short of it was they all achieved at least 1 or maybe 2 grades higher to what they anticipated grades were as far as the school were concerned.
Wow.
Now, I was on absolute tenterhooks this time last year when they were still...
I can imagine, because GCSE results come out, don't they, in a couple of weeks?
Yeah, that's it. And I was thinking, right, okay, I think I've made a difference. I think they've actually taken on board how to learn And I was using things like smell as an anchor for learning, because we prepared little bottles of what we called mammoth poo.
Brilliant. I love it.
You find mammoths, you follow their poo.
Brilliant.
So we had little bottles of a strong scent that they would then associate with the learning. So they'd anchor that, put it on their clothes before they walked into the exam, and lo and behold, it worked. I had them all running or exercising for at least 20 minutes before any revision session to get the kind of brain chemistry working and stuff. So in all fairness, they worked hard at following out my instructions, if you like. But when their exam results came out, it was absolutely fantastic. They were so grateful. They were astounded that they'd done so well, because they weren't expecting it. And they weren't led to expect it. The school had basically kind of labelled them as, no, you're not going to be total success in this. You'll be lucky to get basic grades. But across the board, especially in the key subjects, maths and English and stuff, because of the work they'd then known how to put in and do things in small chunks and stuff like that, it really worked. So I had a couple of quite emotional telephone calls on results day last year. And again, when I met up with my nephew a day or two afterwards, it's like massive hugs and thanks Uncle Jules and all the rest of it. So it was really, really nice. Again, humbling to actually have made a difference. And I know now they're in college and all the rest of it now, studying for A-levels, etc. And what I actually told them is still making a difference for them with how they learn and how they revise stuff. It's really, really good.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's almost, I'm welling up a little bit, because that's just the difference you've made to those young people's lives by investing a few months of your time, putting a program together for them, all the things that you've just, I just think that's phenomenal. That's going to change their lives for the rest of their lives.
It's made a big difference in confidence and all the rest of it. Now, that was the small part, if you like, of mammoth hunting, which was part of Team Tiger. What happened then in the summer, I was helping my daughter with some confidence stuff and things. And my brother and a couple of the other parents had kind of come to me, thanking me for what I'd done, and said, look, you need to bottle this and put it together with the other stuff that you do around the confidence, interview skills, presentation skills, how to present yourself, how to sell yourself, basically, and personal branding for young people looking for jobs, how to come across confidently, but keeping that balance between arrogance, because a lot of people think young people are arrogant when all they are is actually being confident. So that's where Team Tiger was born, if you like, because I put a program together for primarily my daughter, my nephew, and the lads that had done the mammoth hunting with me, and a couple of my daughter's friends. So we were meeting on a kind of once every 2 or 3 weeks basis as a group. And we were talking about things then like social media, the dangers of it, the advantages of it. We were talking about things then about how to make a first impression, how to kind of win back from a first impression if the first impression you made wasn't particularly inspiring, how to communicate with people of different generations, because you can't use text speak in your a job application and that sort of stuff. And that worked out really well. So throughout last summer, before they went back to school and stuff, that worked well. And again, I based the content of that program on what I've done for a couple of lads I knew since they were 14. They're like 38 now, with families and children of their own. But they still get in touch with me and for some tips around confidence, tips around job applications and stuff like that. So it was kind of setting in place that like support mechanism as part of that initial program, which was 6 months initially of coaching and kind of intense input, if you like. But then the support is always there for them to come back and dip into other topics and stuff. And I'm still working with some of the lads now, more than a year on from where we were, and that's really good.
Amazing. No, I just think it's phenomenal that you've taken a toolkit, found a way to make it relatable to teenagers, built their confidence, built their self-belief, absolutely delivered enhanced results which they wouldn't have had, and then further developed that then into almost like a personal development life skills type course for teenagers.
Yeah, and that's what it is basically.
Yeah, I just think it's amazing to have been able to do that, and to have got them great results in the first program, and then them actually say, we'd like to be part of another program. I mean, that's just amazing to have young people in a place where they're like, they believe in you, that you believe in them, and there's this amazing kind of toolkit that you can use. I love the fact that you used NLP anchoring on the mammoth poo. That's amazing. I never thought I'd say poo on a podcast. I hope I don't get bleeped for it. But it's amazing because the sense of smell is so strong, and when you can anchor that, that's just amazing, because they'll have had that smell around them when they were calm and relaxed and studying, and then if they had that same scent on them when they went in the exam, that calm and confidence will be there. You know, I think that's a real hack that any parent or teacher could take away from this episode and actually use. You know, I mean, it's like when I go into a spa. Now, this is not for young people, obviously, but you go into a spa to go and have a massage or something, and spas always have that lovely scent and smell when you go in. And, you know, when you come home,
memories of relaxation.
Yeah. And so, you know, and other times when you then smell that and you think, oh, I remember having that massage, and your shoulders drop by 2 inches like mine just did. You know, it's anchoring is so powerful, and to use the power of scent to help people, I just think it's such a great idea. Really, really, really good. I'm conscious that, oh my goodness, we've been here for 50 minutes already. How? And there's so much more I want to ask you. So I'm really quickly going to ask you to touch on the third area that I wanted to talk about, which was Feed the Right Wolf, which is another of your programs for young people, which again, I just think is amazing, particularly when you've used it to help teens with better management of their emotions, in particular anger. I just think, again, that's a thing a lot of teenagers, me included when I was a teenager, really struggled to manage that really powerful emotion. So I'd love you to tell everybody a bit about that. And then I've got some quick fire questions for you before we wrap up.
Okay. The Feed the Right Wolf program I came up with is based around the old kind of Native American story, if you like, of an older father or grandfather speaking to his grandson or son about the battle that goes on within everyone between the good wolf and the bad wolf. And then the young man asks, well, which wolf wins? And, you know, the elderly wise man says, well, it's the one you feed the most. So that's where I kind of come up with the program then of Feed the Right Wolf. So we can actually sit down with someone and says, look, okay, you've got this battle going on in your mind. What are the wolves? How are they competing with each other? And then how can we come about with techniques to make sure that you're actually nurturing and encouraging the right wolf, the wolf that you want to win?
Amazing.
And that was along the lines then of identifying NLP, using timeline therapy again, and also just looking at some basic kind of relaxation techniques, anger management stuff, things like minding the gap between stimulus and response. And, you know, I've managed to kind of transform one young lad from an instant door puncher. His kind of normal response to any kind of anger stimulus was to punch something.
Wow.
To someone who can actually count to 3 now and channel his anger into a more constructive outlet. And it was kind of things like do 5 push-ups rather than kind of punch a door and break your knuckles. Just get down and do 5 push-ups, or kind of go outside and cool down a little bit rather than just let your anger loose like that wild wolf, if you like. So I've applied that mainly with some young people, particularly young people who haven't come to terms yet with being able to control their emotions, haven't had the life experience, if you like, of knowing that sometimes that outburst isn't appropriate. But I've also used it with adults as well, the ones that perhaps respond too quickly to an anger stimulus to actually kind of be harmful to themselves with their reaction. It's like that mind the gap thing is quite a big thing with that.
I love the idea of mind the gap. I'd never thought of it quite like that before, but I think, we know, the very early psychologists were talking about, the fact that human beings have a stimulus and response, and it's they used to describe it like an automatic process. And then they realized that obviously as human beings, we have the power of cognition and the ability to choose in those moments. But sometimes, particularly with powerful emotions like anger, the stimulus, the response can feel so instantaneous that it's almost like you feel like you don't have a choice. choice. But I loved how you made it, not made him, but you suggested that like doing 5 press-ups, it is that gap, isn't it? You've created gaps there for him to choose.
And again, a lot of the work is, a lot of what I devised was around the work done by, I think it's Steve Peters, his name is, who wrote The Chimp Paradox.
Yeah, funny that. On the old bookshelf. Might it be this book?
That's the one. The Chimp Paradox, Mind Management. Really, really good book, and gives a good insight into basics kind of human psychology and how we've all got this inner chimp. So Frank, our inner chimp, is used quite a lot on my Team Tiger program because, again, young people haven't quite learned how to tame the inner chimp yet, but also on the Feed the Right Wolf with the anger management and things. It's all about making sure that our inner chimp doesn't run away with us and control our responses before the actual human side of us can take control properly. So that's where the Feed the Right Wolf kind of program fits in, with a bit of anger management and response management, if you like. It doesn't necessarily just have to be anger. It's any strong emotional response. And so just fun as well.
So in terms of the Feed the Right Wolf, I mean, I just love, now you've explained it. When you first said to me, Feed the Right Wolf, I was like, what's that going to be about? But then when you described the way that you use it as an analogy, and I'm like, that's just brilliant, because everybody has that in a part of them. And the bit that gets attention is the bit that grows. We always say, don't we, in NLP, where focus goes, energy flows. And what you focus on is what you get, all of those NLP things. But I love how you've taken those concepts and you've actually turned it into a metaphor that totally works, that everybody's going to get.
Yeah.
Feed the wolf that's, I guess, got the positive limits, positive beliefs, the ones that are going to spur you on, and all of those thoughts. I just think it's phenomenal. And as soon as you described it, and I was like, yeah, that totally works. I might have to pinch that. I'll have to credit you forever and a day now talking about feeding the right wolf. Now, just last question, if I can, on this topic, is I know that it was a program that you did with young people, and I know that you used timeline therapy as one of the tools in there. Was there anything specific that drew you to that, or results that got you?
I think the results were really good. And although young people haven't got the same kind of length of journey the rest of us have with their emotions and all the rest of it, I think a lot of the time it was actually easier to frame for young people because they were more open to the idea of that kind of Gestalt theory of emotions all being chained together and being able to release those emotions, because I think they were more imaginative, if you like, with regard to how timeline therapy can be framed and how they can visualize it to help it work. I think I certainly found it easier with the young people to actually do that than some adults. But again, the results are there. And as long as it's framed properly with regard to, you won't remember your first kind of really happy time, you won't remember your first really angry time, your really sad time, your really fearful time. And they get it. It's like, oh yeah, I know, because I can't remember before, having the toffee from my granddad when I was 4, that sort of thing. So they accept the framing, and they seem to accept the whole idea of that kind of Gestalt timeline on a far more accepted basis.
Yeah. And if anybody's listening to us talk about timeline therapy and you're like, what the heck are you talking about? Go back and listen to the episode on what is timeline therapy and you'll learn all about what Julian's talking about. But yeah, timeline therapy works on the basis of releasing negative emotions, allowing people to be free to make decisions and live their life without the baggage from the past. The idea of emotions being held in a gestalt. The very first event starts that gestalt, but before conscious memory. So people can't remember that first event. And I can imagine, I've never done it with young people, but I can imagine them being like, oh, right, okay, yeah, fine. Whereas I think adults have this critical mind. They have that more conscious part of them that kind of almost puts up the barriers, whereas I think the kids are more receptive. Just out of interest, how old were these young people that you did it with?
Right, the youngest would have been 14.
Yeah.
And majority were 15 or 16.
So again, I just think how amazing to have a 14 or 15-year-old at that point in their life be able to let go of the 5 big negative emotions that Timeline deals with: anger, sadness, hurt, fear, and guilt. To clear that out as a teenager, I bet you their teenage years benefit from that. I've got no doubt about it.
In all fairness as well, I've had some feedback from some of them that have actually participated in all the Team Tiger staff, and they were saying that it has made a difference. It has calmed them down with a lot of things. It's made them more accepting of some situations. It's increased their maturity, if you like. It's given them some really good tools to actually move into adult life with, where, we all know how difficult kind of that transition from adolescence to adulthood is. And anything like that can actually help them make that journey a little bit easier will kind of pay dividends later on in life.
Won't it just? Won't it just?
Yes.
Won't it just? Listen, I can't believe we've just hit the hour mark. And I'm sitting here thinking, I can't cut anything out. Like, if I was to edit this down, I can't. And I thank you so much for sharing all of these stories. I don't know about anybody else listening today, but I found it hugely inspiring to hear just what a difference this NLP toolkit has made for people in the armed forces, for you personally as well, but also the benefit it's made to these young people, and how you've taken that toolkit and how you've turned it into something that they love, that they want to participate in. I just think is amazing. Right, so we've got the quick fire round.
Okay.
Julian wasn't aware this was happening, by the way. So he's going to be completely off the foot. So Julian, I want the first response that comes into your head. You know the drill with these types of things. So here we go. A few quick fire questions for you. If you could stay at any age, what age would you stay at and why?
18. I think that's the time I had most freedom in my life and enjoyed my life more. I was more confident as an individual, having overcome like the worst of my kind of teenage years. And I had the whole of my life in front of me. So 18.
I love it. I love it. What's your favourite word?
Dynamic.
Love it.
It explains so many different situations.
Brilliant. Question for you. What does unleash your potential mean to you?
A hell of a lot, to be honest with you. I don't think I'd go anywhere else now. And again, your very individual presentation style, Laura, I don't think I could learn NLP from anybody else. It just wouldn't have the same ring to it now. I'm definitely kind of committed to it. Excellent.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love the word excellence. We'll take that.
I'm not getting paid to say that, by the way, either.
No, I'm not paying him at all. So yeah. And final question. If you could give your younger self a piece of advice, what would you give to yourself? Oh,
gosh. Go for it. Don't let any kind of self-limiting beliefs hold you back. Overcome them and go for it. Yeah, no regret.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and sharing your expertise and experience. I know people are going to love listening to this. Julian, if people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
All my contact details and all social media kind of streams I got and all the rest of it are on my business website. And that is www.barkidsolutions, which is BARCUD.solutions. And you'll find everything on there, including a contact form. And please, if you've got any questions about what I've spoken about today, get in touch. And more than happy to communicate with you and everybody else. It's great.
I love it. I love it. So www.barkid.solutions.com.
No, just barkid.solutions. No com or anything again.
Okay, now I'm going to confuse everyone.
www.barkid.solutions.
We got it. I was assuming there was a bit on the end, but there's not.
No.
Barkid Solutions. I love it. I love it. Julian, thank you so much. Thank you all for listening to this podcast episode. I hope you've loved hearing Julian's stories of how he's been helping other people with his toolkit. Remember, if you want to find out more about Unleash Your Potential, our training company, then head on over to unleashyourpotential.org.uk. And of course, if you want to get the back catalogue of NLP Talks podcast episodes, then go on over to nlptalks.com and you will find all of them there. You can absolutely fill your boots with many, many, many different types of NLP tools and interviews. So thank you for joining me. Take care, and I look forward to welcoming you onto the next episode.